The taillights of the squad car flared red in her rearview like a warning from hell itself, pulling her over on the cracked asphalt of Highway 17 just as the sun bled orange into the horizon. "Step out slow, ma'am," the deputy drawled through his open window, his voice thick with that Monroe County smugness, the kind that stuck to your skin like humid regret. Brinley killed the engine of her old Ford F-150, the truck that had carried her 1,000 miles from the ghost she'd left behind, and when she swung the door open, his eyes narrowed, then widened, a smirk curling like smoke. "Well, damn. Cops told me I was too pretty to drive this truck," he said, leaning against his cruiser as if the words were a punchline only he got, his partner chuckling low from the shotgun seat. She stood there in the gravel shoulder, dust swirling at her boots, the weight of 5 years' exile pressing down like the summer heat that never quite lifted in East Texas. Brinley Harlan had rolled out of Monroe at 27, her badge still warm in her pocket from the resignation she'd forced herself to sign. Her heart cracked open by the woman who'd promised forever but folded under the town's unyielding gaze. Now at 32 she was back, not for redemption, but because the letter from her ailing father had arrived like a summons from the grave, tucked into the glove box beside the faded photo of Juliet's smile. The deputy, face familiar, name escaping her, but the arrogance as fresh as yesterday, stepped closer, his hand resting casual on his holster. "License and registration, sweetheart. Wouldn't want a girl like you getting ideas about outrunning the law." Brinley handed over the papers without a word, her fingers steady despite the tremor in her chest, the one that always surfaced when Monroe's borders closed in. The truck, her Bessie, was no stranger to scrutiny. She'd rebuilt it herself after the divorce from a marriage that had been more cover than commitment, pouring her fury into welds and oil changes until it rumbled like a heartbeat she could control. The second deputy, younger with a mustache that screamed fresh academy, peered into the cab, whistling at the stack of legal folders on the passenger seat. "What's a lady hauling all this for? Court docs? You some kinda ambulance chaser in heels?" She bit back the retort, tasting bile, remembering the precinct locker room whispers that had chased her out. "Harlan's got that look, boys, too soft for the streets." But Brinley wasn't soft. She was forged in the fire of secrets kept and loves lost. Her queerness a quiet rebellion she'd buried under flannel and flat tires. The first deputy scanned her ID, his brow furrowing at the Texas Rangers emblem faded on the laminate, a relic from her days as a state investigator, before the scandal that wasn't quite a scandal but enough to end her. "Brinley Harlan. Huh, thought that name rang a bell. You the one who up and quit on us? Left poor Juliet high and dry." The mention hit like a shotgun blast, splintering the air between them. Juliet Monroe, no relation to the town, thank God, but she'd worn its name like a crown of thorns, had been her partner in every sense, their nights tangled in the shadows of abandoned barns, whispers of "I love you" drowned out by the fear of dawn. They'd met at the academy in Austin, two women with fire in their veins, Juliet's southern belle grace masking a steel spine that matched Brinley's own. But Monroe had a way of grinding down edges, turning allies into informants, and when rumors of their affair surfaced, fueled by a jealous ex and a bottle of bourbon too many, Juliet had chosen silence, letting Brinley take the fall. "It's for the badge," she'd whispered that last night, her tears soaking Brinley's collar. "For us in the long run." Now the deputy handed back her papers with a shrug. "All clear, darlin'. Just a routine stop. Drive safe. Wouldn't want that pretty face all roughed up." His laugh echoed as they peeled away, leaving her alone with the engine's idle hum and the ache that bloomed fresh in her ribs. Brinley slid back into the cab, gripping the wheel until her knuckles whitened, the road ahead blurring with the sting of unshed tears. She wasn't here to dredge up old wounds. Her father needed her, his emphysema-ravaged lungs a ticking clock in the clapboard house on Elm Street. But Monroe had other plans, always did. Its pecan groves whispering judgments through the wind, its clapboard churches preaching salvation with one hand while clutching pitchforks with the other. The town limits sign loomed 5 miles out, rusted iron letters proclaiming welcome to Monroe, where faith meets fortune, a lie wrapped in magnolia blooms. Brinley eased Bessie onto the exit ramp, the truck's tires humming over potholes that mirrored the fractures in her soul. She'd imagined this return 100 times on the interstates, steal herself, sign the papers for the old man's care, and vanish before the questions started. But as the first streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows over the divide between the manicured lawns of the hilltops and the sagging porches down in the hollows. She felt the pull, inexorable as gravity. Juliet was still here, last she'd heard. Risen through the ranks to deputy chief under Harlan Voss, the man who'd built the department on backroom deals and borrowed loyalties. She parked outside the diner on Main, the neon Ethel's Eats buzzing like a trapped fly, and stepped inside for coffee, black as her mood. The place hadn't changed. Vinyl booths cracked like old skin, the air thick with grease and gossip. Ethel herself, widowed and wise at 70, slid a mug across the counter without asking. Brinley Harlan. Prodigal daughter rolls in on 4 wheels instead of a prayer. Your daddy's holding on, but it's thin. And you, looking like you swallowed a storm. Brinley managed a half smile, stirring sugar she didn't need. Storms pass, Ethel. How's the town treating you? Same as always, kissing the ring of whoever's got the most land. Ethel leaned in, voice dropping. Heard Voss is up for sheriff again. Man's got dirt under his nails thicker than the Brazos mud. And Juliet. She's his right hand, sharp as ever, but those eyes of hers? Haunted girl. Like she's carrying Monroe on her back. The name landed soft this time, a bruise rather than a blow. Brinley sipped, the burn grounding her. Haven't seen her in years. Not since. Ethel nodded, wiping the counter with a rag that had seen better days. Since the whispers turned to shouts. Town softened some, pride flags at the county fair last summer, but old habits die hard. You staying long? As long as it takes. She paid and left, the bell tinkling like a farewell she wasn't ready for. Outside, the sky had deepened to indigo, stars pricking through like hesitant confessions. Brinley climbed into Bessie, the engine coughing to life, and pointed her toward Elm Street. The house came into view at the end of the lane, its porch light a lone beacon amid the overgrown azaleas. Her father waited inside, frail in his recliner, oxygen tank hissing like a serpent. Bryn, he rasped as she knelt beside him, his hand papery on her cheek. Knew you'd come. Truck sounds like hell. Fix it tomorrow. She nodded, throat tight, helping him to bed with the gentleness of someone who'd learned loss too young. Her mother gone to cancer when Brinley was 12, leaving a void filled with her father's stoic silences and the sheriff's academy as escape. Sleep evaded her that night, the ceiling fan whirring accusations. Coward. Runner. Dawn crept in gray and unforgiving, and by 8, she was at the garage behind the house, wrench in hand, sweat beading as she tightened bolts under the hood. The work steadied her, each turn a defiance against the chaos Juliet had left in her wake. It was mid-morning when the cruiser rolled up, gravel crunching under tires she recognized from the night before. The same deputy stepped out, flanked by Voss himself, Harlan Voss, 50-something with a gut straining his uniform and eyes like polished flint. Morning, Harlan, he called, as if they were kin, which in Monroe's twisted family tree they might as well be. Brinley straightened, wiping grease on her jeans, the title Harlan a hook in her gut. Her father's name, Voss's ambition, coincidence or curse? Chief, she said evenly, meeting his gaze. No fear, just the cold calculation of someone who'd stared down worse. He sauntered closer, the deputy hanging back with a grin. Heard you had a little welcome last night. Boys get overzealous sometimes, but seeing you here wrench in hand reminds me why you never fit the mold. Too pretty for the batch, too stubborn for the kitchen. His laugh was a bark devoid of humor, and the deputy echoed it like a trained dog. Brinley's pulse thrummed, but she held steady, the folders from her cab flashing in her mind, evidence she'd gathered on the road, tips from informants about Voss's side hustles, kickbacks from the lumber mills, protection for the meth labs in the hollows. It was why she'd really come back, the letter a convenient veil. Molds for casting, Chief. I broke mine years ago. Voss's smile didn't reach his eyes. Careful, girl. Monroe don't take kindly to cracks in the foundation. Stick around for your daddy, but don't go digging where you shouldn't. He tipped his hat, a mockery of courtesy, and they drove off, leaving dust devils in their wake. She watched them go, the fire kindling low in her belly, the same fire that had drawn Juliet to her, 2 sparks in a powder keg. By afternoon, she'd visited the hospital for her father's check-in, the sterile halls echoing with beeps that mocked her resolve. On the way out, a nurse pressed a note into her hand. Coffee at the mill? Jay, her heart stuttered, the paper crumpling in her fist. Juliet. After all this time. The old cotton mill loomed on the outskirts, its brick facade scarred by ivy and abandonment, a haunt for teenagers and memories. Brinley arrived early, parking Bessie in the shadow of the silos, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. She leaned against the tailgate, the note's ink smudged like a half-forgotten promise. Footsteps crunched and there she was, Juliet Voss, now no still Monroe, her uniform crisp, hair pulled back in a ponytail that betrayed silver threads at the temples. 34, but time had carved her finer. Lines around her mouth from smiles suppressed and secrets swallowed. Bryn, Juliet breathed, stopping 10 feet away, as if the distance could contain the flood. Her eyes, hazel and haunted, searched Brinley's face, finding the scars they'd both inflicted. Juliet. The name tasted like whiskey and regret. They stood there, the space between them a chasm bridged only by the hum of cicadas. Then, slow as surrender, Juliet closed the gap, her hand brushing Brinley's arm. A touch electric, forbidden. I saw the truck last night. Knew it was you before I even read the plates. Juliet's voice cracked, the southern lilt softened by years of command. God, I've missed. Don't. Brinley stepped back, the contact searing. You chose Jules. The badge over us. Said it was for the long run, but 5 years feels pretty damn short. Juliet's face crumpled, the deputy chief facade fracturing. It was. Every day. Fuss. He knew Bryn. Pressured me. Said I'd lose everything if I didn't play clean. I thought if I climbed high enough I could protect us both. But protecting nothing is what I got. The confession hung raw and ragged, pulling Brinley under despite her resolve. They talked then, words tumbling like river rocks. Nights at the academy, stolen kisses in patrol cars. The night Juliet turned away at the bar, letting the whispers fester. I was scared, Juliet admitted, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. Of the town, of losing you to it. But losing you anyway. It's been dying slow. Brinley's walls trembled, the ache blooming into something fiercer. A longing laced with fury. I'm here for Dad. And Voss. I've got proof he's bleeding the county dry. You in or out this time? Juliet's hand found hers again. Fingers interlacing like puzzle pieces long separated. In. For you. For us. The kiss came then, tentative at first, then desperate, tasting of salt and second chances under the mill's indifferent eaves. But as they broke apart, sirens wailed distant, a harbinger, and Brinley wondered if Monroe would let them rewrite its script. The mill's shadows lengthened as they parted, Juliet wiping her face with the back of her hand, the gesture achingly familiar from mornings after in cramped apartments. Meet me at the station tomorrow 9 sharp, she murmured, her breath warm against Brinley's ear. I'll get you access to the logs. But Voss. He's paranoid now. One wrong move and he'll bury us both. Brinley nodded, the plan solidifying in her mind like rebar in concrete. Cross-referenced the timestamps from her folders with the department's dispatch records. Nailed down the pattern of Voss's overtime runs to the backwoods properties owned by his cronies. Driving back to Elm Street, the truck's headlights cut through the twilight, illuminating fleeting glimpses of lives unchanged. Families on porches fanning themselves with church bulletins, pickup games in empty lots where kids dreamed of escaping the same cycles their parents couldn't break. Brinley's father was asleep when she slipped in, his chest rising shallow under the quilt her mother had stitched from feed sacks. She sat by his bed, the room dim with the scent of liniment and fading life, and let the day's weight settle. Juliet's kiss lingered on her lips, a spark in the dry tinder of her resolve, but doubt crept in like fog off the river. Could she trust the woman who'd once chosen silence? Morning brought a drizzle, the kind that turned red clay to slick mud and Monroe's streets to mirrors reflecting its hypocrisies. Brinley fueled up at the Gas and Go, where the attendant, a girl no older than 20 with tattoos peeking from her sleeves, rang her out with a knowing glance. Heard you tangled with the boys in blue last night. Careful, Voss don't like his toys played with. The warning hung as Brinley pulled away, the wipers slapping rhythm like a metronome to her mounting tension. The station squatted on the edge of downtown, a squat brick bunker with flags snapping in the breeze. Stars and stripes alongside the state banner. No room for the rainbows that flickered in Austin's skyline. Juliet met her at the side door, badge glinting under her jacket, her expression a mask of professional calm that didn't reach her eyes. "This way," she said, leading Brinley through corridors humming with fluorescent buzz and the murmur of radios. Desks cluttered with cold coffee and case files, deputies averting their gazes as if sensing the charge in the air. In the records room, a windowless vault of filing cabinets and flickering monitors, Juliet locked the door behind them. "I've got 30 minutes before the shift change. What do you need?" Brinley spread her folders on the scarred oak table, timelines and affidavits spilling out like entrails. These dates, late nights, no calls logged. Voss claiming hazard pay for ghosts. Juliet's fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling logs that matched like puzzle edges. Absences coinciding with mill deliveries rerouted to shadow accounts, witness statements from hollow dwellers too scared to sign. As they worked, shoulders brushing in the tight space, the past seeped in unbidden. Late shifts poring over maps, Juliet's foot hooking around her ankle under the desk, silent signals that spoke volumes. "Remember that storm in 18? Juliet whispered, her voice barely above the printer's whine. "We holed up here, rain hammering the roof, and you said we'd ride it out together." Brinley's throat tightened. "We did. Until you decided the storm was me." Juliet paused, hand hovering over a printout. "I was wrong. Terrified of what loving you meant in a place like this. Family legacies, church suppers where folks pray for your soul while sharpening their knives. My mama, she found the letters, burned them in the sink. Said I'd shame the bloodline." Her voice broke and Brinley reached out, thumb tracing the vein pulsing at Juliet's wrist. "Shame's their weapon, not ours. We're the ones who get to choose." The door rattled, then a fist pounding. The young deputy from the stop, his voice muffled. "Chief? You in there? Voss wants a word." Juliet froze, then called back steady. "Give me 5, tying up loose ends." They gathered the papers in haste, hearts pounding in unison, and when the door clicked open, Brinley slipped out the back, the evidence tucked under her arm like contraband hope. She spent the afternoon at the county library, a stately relic with oak shelves and whispers of forgotten scandals, cross-checking property deeds against Voss's financials hacked from public records. The librarian, Mrs. Caldwell, a widow with a penchant for true crime podcasts, slid her a thumb drive unasked. Heard whispers about the chief. Folks talk when they think no one's listening. Brinley pocketed it with a nod, the gesture a small rebellion in a town starved for them. By evening, rain had turned to downpour, drumming on Bessie's roof as she idled outside her father's house. He was up, surprisingly, shuffling to the kitchen in his robe. "Girl, you look like you swallowed a hornet's nest." "Spill." Over weak tea, Brinley unloaded fragments, the stop, the mill, Juliet's ghost rising. Her father listened, eyes distant. "Voss courted your mother once before me. Ambitious snake even then. As for Jules, love's a freight train, Bryn. Derails you if you don't hold on." His cough rattled, cutting the wisdom short, but his words lodged deep, a permission she'd craved. Night fell heavy and sleep came fitful, dreams weaving Juliet's touch with Voss's sneer. Dawn broke clearer, the air washed clean, and Brinley headed to the DIS office in the next county over, a neutral ground where Monroe's tendrils thinned. The assistant district attorney, a wiry woman named Lena with a no-nonsense bob, reviewed the stack over lukewarm coffee. "This is dynamite, Harlan. Kickbacks, falsified reports, could topple his whole operation. But you'll need a witness. Someone inside." "Got one," Brinley said, thinking of hazel eyes and hesitant hands. Back in Monroe by noon, she found Juliet at the diner, tucked in a booth with a salad she wasn't eating. "Lena's greenlighting it. We move tonight. Confront him with the logs at the station. You with me?" Juliet's fork stilled, fork tines glinting like accusations. Voss called me in this morning. Offered me the sheriff's spot if I run clean. Said he'd bury the past if I helped bury you." The words landed like lead, Brinley's world tilting. "And I told him to go to hell." Juliet's smile was fierce, fragile. "But he's got ears everywhere. We do this, it's all or nothing." They planned in whispers. Brinley from the shadows, Juliet drawing Voss to his office after hours. As sunset painted the sky in bruised purples, tension coiled in Brinley's gut, a serpent ready to strike. She parked Bessie a block away. Slipping through alleys slick with runoff, the town hushed as if holding its breath. The station loomed, lights low, and she entered through the service door. Badge long gone but instincts sharp. Voices drifted from Voss's office, Juliet's measured tone, his bluster rising. Brinley edged closer, heart a war drum, and peered through the blinds. Voss paced, face ruddy. You think you can play me, girl? Harlan's a ghost. Let her haunt Austin, not here. Juliet stood tall, arms crossed. It's over, Harlan. The logs don't lie. Resign or we drag you out. He lunged then, hand clamping her wrist, and Brinley burst in, phone recording, voice steel. Let her go, Chief. Texas Ranger style. Assault on an officer. Add it to the list. Voss whirled, shock morphing to rage. You. The pretty truck driver. This your idea of revenge? Justice, Brinley corrected, holding up the drive. Years of it, bottled up. Deputies flooded in at Juliet's shout. Cuffs clicking as Voss thrashed. His empire crumbling in sputters. But as they hauled him away, his eyes locked on Juliet, venomous. You sold out your own Monroe. Town will remember. The station emptied, leaving them alone in the fluorescent hush, adrenaline crashing like waves. Juliet sagged against the desk, tears flowing free. We did it. Brinley pulled her close, the embrace a dam breaking. Kisses fierce with victory and vindication, bodies pressing as if to erase the years. We, she echoed, the word a vow. But Monroe's memory was long, and as they drove to Juliet's empty house on the hill, her mother's passing last year leaving it a hollow shell, the whispers began. A brick through Brinley's truck window that night, scrawled with Dyke Justice, the glass shattering like illusions. Juliet bandaged the cut on her palm from the shards, her touch tender. They'll come for us. Always do. Then we face them, Brinley said, pulling her into bed, the sheets cool against fevered skin. Their lovemaking was a reclamation. Slow explorations mapping scars, breaths mingling in the dark, whispers of stay and fight. Dawn found them entwined, the world outside stirring with judgment, but in that moment they were whole. Days blurred into a tense truce. Voss arraigned, bail denied, the DA's office buzzing with tips from deputies jumping ship. Brinley's father rallied, his eyes brighter at dinner with Juliet across the table, her hand under it on his knee, a silent alliance. But the town simmered, church parking lots filling with murmurs, the local paper running a buried story. Local hero or harlot? Inside the Voss scandal. It peaked at the county fair, under strings of lights strung like nooses between booths. Brinley manned the cotton candy stand for Ethel, Juliet circulating in plain clothes, their glances across the crowd electric. Then the confrontation. A knot of men from the hollows, faces twisted, cornering Juliet by the Ferris wheel. Traitor! One spat, the word igniting the fuse. Fists flew, Brinley barreling through, pulling Juliet free as deputies, loyal now, intervened. Bruised and breathless, they retreated to Bessie, the engine roaring them away to the river's edge. This place, Juliet gasped, ice on her jaw. It chews you up. Brinley cupped her face, thumb gentle on the swelling. Not us. Not anymore. The river murmured its ancient song, willows draping like veils over the water's glassy surface, and for a stolen hour, they sat on the tailgate, legs dangling, the fair's distant clamor a fading echo. Juliet leaned into Brinley's shoulder, the bruise blooming purple under her eye, a badge of their shared defiance. I keep waiting for the other boot to drop, she confessed, voice soft against the lap of waves. Voss in jail, but his friends. They're the real roots. Brinley traced circles on her knee, the denim warm under her palm. Roots can be cut. We've pruned enough already. But even as she spoke, the knot in her chest tightened, her father's prognosis worsening, the truck's alternator whining like a premonition, and the stack of resignation letters Juliet had drafted for her desk drawer, just in case. Love in Monroe wasn't a fairy tale. It was a negotiation with shadows, each concession a slice from the soul. Back at the house, her father waited with cornbread and confessions, his voice a rasp over the kitchen table. Saw the news. You girls. You lit a fire. But fires spread, Bryn. Folks like us, we burn first. He coughed into his handkerchief, spots of red staining the cloth, and Brinley gripped his hand, the fragility a mirror to her own. Then we rebuild. Stronger. Juliet stayed that night, slipping into Brinley's childhood bed, as if it could hold the weight of their history. Their bodies moved with the quiet urgency of survivors, hands learning anew the maps of each other's grief, fingers in hair, lips on collarbones, the rhythm a counterpoint to the rain pattering the tin roof. Afterward, tangled in sheets scented with lavender from her mother's sachets, Juliet whispered, "What if we left? Austin, Portland, somewhere the air doesn't judge." Brinley's heart stuttered, the dream tantalizing, but reality anchored her. "Dad's here. And you. This is your fight too." Juliet's sigh was a fracture. It was. Now it's ours. But Voss's trial, it's dredging everything. The old rumors, the letters Mama burned. If they use it against me. They won't. Brinley's certainty was a shield, forged in the long nights alone on the road, where she'd replayed their story until it hardened into resolve. But sleep came uneasy, dreams of handcuffs on Juliet's wrists, Voss's laugh echoing from cell bars. The week ground on, a gauntlet of depositions and sidelong stares. Brinley testified first, the courtroom in the county seat a wood-paneled tomb where the judge's gavel cracked like Judgment Day. Voss sat shackled, his glare a venom arrow across the aisle. But her voice held steady, laying out the ledgers, the lies, the lives ruined in Monroe's underbelly. He preyed on the vulnerable, she said, eyes on the jury, farmers and clerks, faces etched with the town's dualities. Took oaths to protect, twisted them for profit. Whispers rippled as she stepped down, a matron in the back row nodding faint approval, but outside the parking lot bristled. Protesters with signs law and order, not Lesbo circus, their chants a dull roar. Juliet pulled her into the cruiser, tires spinning gravel as they fled. "You were brilliant," she said, hand on the gearshift, but her grip trembled. "My turn tomorrow. What if I crack?" "You won't." Brinley covered her hand, the contact a lifeline. "You're the steel in this town, Jules. Always were." That night, betrayal slithered in unexpected. A call from Lena the DA. Anonymous tip, check Juliet's emails. Something about a payoff. Brinley's blood iced, but she drove to the station alone, Juliet at a late briefing. The computer in the records room yielded nothing at first. Then, a deleted folder, recoverable with the librarian's thumb drive trick. Messages innocuous on surface. Meet at the mill 2 a.m. Loose ends. Sender Voss's burner. Heart hammering, Brinley printed them, the paper shaking in her hands. Loose ends. Had Juliet played her? The woman who'd burned letters for family honor. Now trading justice for a badge? Rage boiled, hot and blinding, and she stormed to the briefing room, bursting in as Voss's allies. Deputies turned state's evidence, dispersed. Juliet looked up, face paling at the pages thrust under her nose. "Explain." "It's not." Juliet rose, voice urgent. "Bryn, listen. That was before, when he cornered me. I recorded it, turned it over to Lena last week. Checked the timestamps." Doubt warred with desperation, and Brinley scanned, the dates predating their reunion, the follow-up a chain to the DA. Relief flooded, but so did the deeper wound, the fragility of trust eroded by years of Monroe's poisons. They drove in silence to the river again, the water black as ink under moonlight. "I thought you'd sold me out," Brinley admitted, voice raw. "Like before." Juliet turned, tears silver in the dash light. "I deserved that. But I'm done hiding. Tomorrow on the stand I'll tell it all, as the pressure, the love that scared me more than him." The testimony came like a storm breaking. Juliet in the box, uniform traded for a simple blouse, her words measured but unyielding. The affair exposed not as scandal but survival, Voss's threats weaving personal venom into professional rot. "He used my fears against me," she said, voice steady as the river's flow. "My love for Brinley wasn't the crime. His corruption was. And in Monroe we've let men like him define us too long." The courtroom hushed, then erupted, gasps, a sob from the back, the judge's gavel a thunderclap. Voss lunged, chains rattling, his shout, "Lies!" swallowed by bailiffs. Outside, the protesters swelled, But so did a counterline. Women from the hollows, elders with faded pride pins, chanting truth over tradition. Brinley waited in the hall, pulling Juliet into an embrace that defied the stairs, their foreheads touching in silent victory. But the backlash crested that evening, as they walked Main Street arm-in-linked, the air festive with summer's end. A pickup swerved close, beer bottle shattering at their feet, shards glinting like accusations. "Go back to your truck, freaks!" the driver yelled, tires squealing away. Juliet flinched, but Brinley squared her shoulders. "Let them. We're the story now." At home, her father gathered them for a meal, fried okra and stories from his deputy days, his laugh frail but genuine. "Y'all remind me of your mama and me, fighting the tide." As he retired, Juliet and Brinley cleared the table, hands brushing in domestic rhythm. "Marry me," Juliet said, sudden fork clattering. "Not for show. For us. Here or wherever." Brinley's breath caught, the proposal a bridge over the chasm. Yes. The kiss sealed it, sweet with possibility, but the night brought omens. A call from the hospital, her father's lungs failing faster, the truck's engine coughing on startup. As Voss's trial dragged into appeals, the town polarized, boycotts on the diner, but also quiet donations to her father's care. Notes slipped under doors. "Keep fighting." The climax shattered on a humid Friday, Voss's cellmate turning state's evidence for leniency, spilling a final thread. Blackmail tapes from years back, Juliet's voice pleading, Brinley's name a curse. Leaked online by noon, the video grainy but damning, Monroe's feeds ablaze. Reporters swarmed the station, microphones thrusting like spears. Juliet faced them head-on, Brinley at her side. "This is who we are," she declared, hand in Brinley's. "Love isn't leverage. It's liberation." The crowd parted then, not with jeers but a murmur. Some turning away, others nodding, the fracture widening. That night, in the hospital vigil by her father's bed, he squeezed her hand. "Proud, Bryn. Of you both. Now go live." He slipped away at dawn, peaceful, the room filling with the scent of rain. Grief wrapped them tight at the funeral, black dresses under a sky-spitting drizzle, the graveside sparse but sincere, Ethel the librarian, a handful of deputies. Juliet's eulogy cracked the sky open. "He taught us roots run deep, but branches reach free." As dirt fell on the casket, Brinley felt the shift. A loosening, the town's grip slackening. Weeks later, with Voss sentenced to 20, the appeals dust settling, they sold the house, proceeds funding a quiet ceremony at the mill, vows exchanged under ivied arches, rings simple gold. Monroe watched, some with scorn, others with envy, but Brinley and Juliet loaded Bessie for Oregon, the road ahead a ribbon of promise. The rear view shrank the pecan groves, but the heart carried their lessons. Love as rebellion, justice as grace. In the cab, Juliet's head on her shoulder, Brinley whispered, "We made it." "Not made," Juliet replied, smile soft. "We're making it still." Oregon's coast welcomed them with salt wind and evergreens that whispered secrets kinder than Monroe's oaks. But the scars traveled light in their luggage, unpacked in the driftwood cottage they'd claimed overlooking the Pacific. Brinley took work at a local garage, her hands black with oil by day's end, the rhythm of engines a balm to the chaos left behind. Juliet consulted for small-town PDs, her expertise in ethics a quiet crusade. Video calls from the kitchen table where sea foam crashed visible through salt-streaked windows. Yet the idyll fractured in fragments. Nightmares of Voss's glare jolting Brinley awake, Juliet's fingers tracing phantom bruises from the fairground fray. Letters arrive sporadic from Ethel, town's healing slow, but your story's the poultice. And news clips of pride marches in Austin, echoes of their stand. "We started something," Juliet said one evening, feet in the surf, waves licking their ankles like tentative forgiveness. "But does it feel like enough?" Brinley pulled her close, the ocean's roar drowning doubt. "Enough's a horizon, Jules. We chase it together." Their nights wove deeper then, bodies a language of recovery. Gentle arches under flannel sheets, breath sinking to the tide's pull, reclaiming intimacy from fear's shadow. But autonomy bred its own tensions. Juliet's offers from bigger cities, Brinley's reluctance to trade one uniform for another's ghost. Months mellowed into a year, the cottage walls filling with photos. Her father's grin faded to sepia, their rings glinting in sunset shots. and a garden where Brindley planted magnolias, defiant transplants from Texas soil. The betrayal's echo surfaced in a package. Voss's appeal denied, but enclosed a manila folder of yellowed clippings. Anonymous sender's note. Truth's price. Articles from 18, the scandal's birth. Blurry photos of them at a roadhouse. Headlines screaming badge of shame. Juliet burned them in the fire pit. Flames dancing like vengeful spirits. He can't touch us now. But the ash lingered in Brindley's lungs. A reminder that freedom was vigilance. Love a daily amendment. The call came on a fog-shrouded morning. Lena the Dis voice crackling over the line. Monroe's electing a new sheriff. They want Juliet back, clean sweep, her name on the ballot. Says your stand changed things. Juliet laughed, incredulous, but Brindley saw the pull. The tug of roots, the unfinished symphony. What if? Juliet asked later, curled on the couch with tea steaming. We go back, finish what we started. Show them roots can bend without breaking. Brindley's chest tightened, the ocean mocking with its endless churn. And if they snap us again? The debate stretched days, walks on cliffs where gulls wheeled like judges, dinners laced with what-ifs. Ultimately, the heart voted. Return not as exiles but architects. They packed Bessie once more, the truck groaning under boxes of books and dreams, and rolled south, the Rockies a blur of green farewell. Monroe greeted wary. Banners for Juliet's campaign strung taut. But faces in crowds mixed hope with hesitation. Ethel hosted a rally at the diner, pie and podium, where Juliet spoke to a room packed shoulder to shoulder. I left once broken. Came back whole because of love that wouldn't bend. Vote for that, for us, all of us. Applause thundered, tentative at first, then fervent, a woman in the back rising with tears. You gave my daughter courage to come out last month. Brindley stood off stage, throat swelling, the human mosaic unfolding. Hollow folk nodding beside hilltop wives, the divide blurring under shared stories. But Voss's shadow lingered, his allies mounting a whisper campaign. Flyers in mailboxes decrying liberal lesbians ruining law. Threats scrawled on campaign signs, a tire slashed on the cruiser. One night, after a debate where Juliet parried barbs with grace, they found the cottage, rented anew on Elm. Vandalized, windows soaked with slurs. Brindley cleaned in fury, rag-biting glass, while Juliet called reinforcements. A network of allies from the trial, women like them forming a watch. The election eve brought storm clouds, thunder rumbling like old grudges. They drove to the mill full circle, parking under the eaves where kisses had reignited. Whatever tomorrow, Juliet said, hand on Brindley's thigh. We're the win. Their lovemaking there was urgent. Rain sheeting the truck's shell, bodies slick with sweat and certainty. Climax a release of pent fears, afterglow humming with unspoken oaths. Polls closed to cheers, the count a nail-biter broadcast from the VFW hall. When Juliet's name crested, the room erupted, hugs engulfing them, tears mingling with confetti. Sheriff Monroe, first woman first out, swore in at dawn, badge pinned by the governor himself, a nod to the ripple they'd cast. But triumph tasted bittersweet. A deputy's resignation citing family values. Empty pews at church. Juliet threw herself into reform, training on bias, community boards blending Hollow and Hill. While Brindley opened a mechanics co-op, teaching girls wrench work, her truck a mobile classroom. Their life wove public and private, dates at the diner drawing stares that softened to smiles, nights where vulnerability bloomed. Juliet admitting therapy unearthed the shame her mother sowed. Brindley journaling the road's solitude that had armored her heart. A year in, the awakening crested subtle. A town fair without protests, pride flags on Main, a young deputy confiding her crush over coffee. Yet the human cost lingered. Juliet's migraines from stress, Brindley's flinches at sirens. One evening by the river now patrolled clean, they scattered her father's ashes, words washing over water. You built the bridge, Dad. We're crossing. The final fracture came unbidden. Voss's suicide in prison. Note blaming the dykes who stole my town. Guilt nod, but Juliet framed it in a speech at the next Pride. His end wasn't ours to carry. Our beginning is. The crowd swelled, rainbows arching rain, and Brindley, watching from the stage, felt the thaw complete. Monroe not paradise but progress, human in its flaws. They adopted a rescue mutt, named Harlan for the fighter in him, and planned a road trip east, Bessie eager for horizons. Love, they'd learned, wasn't absence of storm but dancing in it. Tangled limbs at dawn, hands clasped in crowds, whispers against the world's roar. In the quiet hours, Brinley traced Juliet's ring finger. Worth every mile. Juliet smiled, eyes sea deep. Every scar. Years folded like accordions, expanding the space between then and now. Monroe evolving under Juliet's steady hand. Reforms rooting deep. The station a hub not of fear but fairness. Diversity hires filling ranks with faces from the hollows and beyond. Brinley's co-op thrived. A garage buzzing with laughter and torque wrenches. Girls in grease-stained overalls dreaming big. Their essays pinned to the walls. Brinley taught me engines don't care who turns the key. The town, once a vice, loosened to a conversation. Potlucks blending recipes from Baptist barbecues and queer potlucks. The river walk lined with benches etched for the fighters. But progress was no panacea. It simmered with setbacks, like the state legislature's bill curbing protections, or the elder deacon's letter to the paper decrying Sodom's sheriff. Juliet bore it with calls to allies, Brinley with midnight runs in Bessie, headlights slicing fog as she outpaced doubts. Their marriage, solemnized in a coastal chapel on a whim during that first Oregon year, deepened into ritual. Sunday drives to the mill, now a community center, where they park and remember, hands intertwined over the gearshift. The betrayal's ghost resurfaced in waves. Anniversaries of the trial triggering Juliet's silences, Brinley's fists clenching at old newsreels. Therapy became their anchor, sessions in a cedar cabin with a counselor who quoted Audre Lorde. Your silence will not protect you. There they unearthed the marrow. Juliet's internalized shame from a father's absentee sermons, Brinley's armor forged from a mother's early grave, leaving her to navigate queerness alone in locker room bravado. One autumn the human tide turned poignant. A call from Lena, now federal, offering Brinley a consultant gig on corruption rings, her Monroe takedown a case study. Come testify in D.C., Lena urged. Show him small-town grit. Brinley hesitated, glancing at Juliet over breakfast, pancakes steaming. It means leaving for a month. You okay holding the fort? Juliet's fork paused, maple syrup pooling. Go. Be the voice we couldn't be back then. But pride masked fear, and that night, as leaves skittered outside, she confessed over wine. What if distance reminds us why we ran? Brinley pulled her onto the rug, fire crackling. Their bodies a dialogue of reassurance. Kisses trailing spines, murmurs weaving futures. Distance tests doesn't break. We're the constant. DC was a whirlwind of marble halls and media scrums. Brinley's testimony a scalpel. Corruption thrives in silence. In Monroe we broke it with truth and love. Cameras flashed. Headlines bloomed from truck to tribunal. Lesbian heroes justice but isolation gnawed. Nights in hotel rooms where she traced Juliet's texts like Braille. Homecoming was a airport embrace. Juliet's whisper fierce. Missed your chaos. The role expanded, Brinley commuting quarterly, her influence rippling. Workshops in rural outposts. Panels on intersectional bias, where she'd share Voss's fall not as triumph but tapestry. Class chasms bridged by shared vulnerability. Gender's cage pride by collective will. Juliet joined when she could, their tag team a force, but the strain showed. Arguments over schedules, Juliet's promotion to regional director pulling her to Dallas, Brinley's reluctance to uproot the co-op. The rupture brewed slow, peaking at a holiday gala in Austin, chandeliers glittering over power suits and power plays. Juliet networked, her laugh bright but brittle, while Brinley nursed a bourbon in the corner, the room's undercurrents. Deals whispered, glances appraising, echoing Monroe's old games. A colleague sidled up, silver-haired and smooth. Your wife's a rising star. Ever think of DC together? Bigger pond, Harlan. The words landed proprietary and Brinley's retort sharp. She's not property. And neither's our life. Juliet overheard, pulling her aside in the powder room, mirrors multiplying their tension. It's just talk, Bryn. Opportunity. But Brinley's eyes stormed. Opportunity or escape? You always chase the next batch like it's absolution. The drive home was thunderous silence. Rain lashing the windshield. Bessie hydroplaning on the interstate. At the cottage, words erupted. You think I'm running again? Juliet shouted, voice echoing off beams. I'm building for us, for the girls who need to see it. Brinley countered, raw. Building on whose grave? Mine. Every time you prioritize the uniform over us. Tears carved paths and they collapsed onto the bed. Apologies unspoken in embraces. Bodies seeking truce, hips grinding forgiveness. Climaxes a catharsis of I'm sorry unspoken. Dawn brought coffee and clarity. A sabbatical for Juliet. Time to recalibrate. The co-op's expansion a joint venture. We're partners, Brinley said, hands clasped over toast. In all of it. Healing deepened their humanism, volunteering at the youth center. Brinley teaching self-defense laced with self-love. Juliet facilitating talks on identity's intersections. A teen's coming-out story, tearful under fairy lights, mirrored their own. I thought Monroe would kill me inside. But you two. You're proof it doesn't. The words a bomb. Affirming their legacy, not conquest but companionship. Yet the arc bent toward release. Her father's estate settled. A scholarship in his name for at-risk kids. Funded by co-op profits. They honeymooned late. A road trip looping the Southwest, Bessie laden with tints and tales. Navajo Nation sunsets, New Orleans jazz haunting bayous, each mile a metaphor for movement. In a Taos adobe under star-pricked skies, Juliet proposed renewal. Vows again here with the ghosts we've outrun. Brinley laughed through tears. Every day. Their love-making starlit, earth-scented, a sacrament of survival. Back in Monroe, transformed now, pride crosswalks painted, the mill's walls murals of diverse hands. Their story woven to lore, school texts citing Harlan versus Voss as Civic's turning point. But the true climax was internal. Juliet's resignation letter, drafted then shredded, replaced by a vision board of travels, advocacy unbound by borders. One spring they fostered a girl from the Hollows, 16 and fierce, her eyes wide at the garage's hum. You really arrested the chief? She asked, wrench in hand. Brinley smiled, grease-streaked. With help. And heart. As years silvered their temples, the narrative circled. A documentary crew from Austin, capturing their arc for screens nationwide. In the interview, under the mill's eaves, Juliet leaned into Brinley. We didn't win Monroe. We won each other. The camera faded, but their gaze held, the message etched. In the clash of self and society, love is the quiet revolution. Tender, tenacious, transformative. Decades distilled to vignettes, the cottage sagging under ivy but sturdy in soul, its porch swing creaking lullabies to grandchildren, Juliet's sister's kids, visiting from Dallas with sticky fingers and questions unfiltered. Nana Bryn, did you really drive a truck like a cowboy? The youngest piped, freckles dancing. Brinley chuckled, ruffling his hair. The word Nana, a crown she'd never foreseen, worn with the ease of seasons turned. Juliet, silver-streaked and sage, tended the magnolias now towering, their blooms defiant against frosts that once felled lesser things. Retirement suited her, boards and books, memoirs half-written on yellow pads. The sheriff's star retired to a velvet box. No more badges, she'd say, winking at Brinley over bifocals. Just this. This being mornings with coffee on the swing, evenings with vinyl spinning Billie Holiday, bodies slower but synced, touches lingering like wine on the tongue. The town's transformation hummed background. Annual Harlan Days festivals blending barbecue with burlesque, the station a model for rural reform, plaques on benches reading in memory of roots repurposed. But echoes persisted, obituaries for old foes, their passing stirring no malice, only mercy's quiet nod. Brinley volunteered still, her co-op evolved to a trade school. Alumni letters arriving like confetti, your hands taught mine to build, not break. Their own fractures mended mosaic, therapy a lifelong thread, anniversaries marked with toasts to the girl Juliet had been, the woman Brinley became, betrayals transmuted to teachers, the silence that once severed now forged in full-throated advocacy, speeches at colleges where they'd hold hands unblinking. Society's script said choose, love or loyalty. Juliet would intone, Brinley's grip anchoring. We rewrote it. The awakening rippled outward, a foundation in her father's name, grants for queer youth in conservative crannies, stories collected in anthologies, from Monroe to the margins. One recipient, a trans kid from the Hollows, visited unannounced, voice trembling. Your book. It said I could stay and fight. They hugged her on the porch, Juliet's tears salt on Brinley's cheek, the cycle benevolent now. Yet age brought its betrayals soft. Juliet's hip faltering on walks, Brinley's eyes dimming over schematics, doctor's visits a duet of dark humor. If I go first, Juliet joked one checkup, squeezing her hand. Haunt me proper, no half measures. Brinley's retort fierce. Together or not at all. Their intimacy adapted, spoons in bed with pillows propping. Kisses lazy but luminous, climaxes waves not tempests, profound in patience. The climax crested gentle, a family gathering for their 50th, tables groaning under potluck bounty, toasts weaving eras. The foster girl, now a lawyer litigating for rights, raised her glass. To the cops who arrested more than a chief, they cuffed our fears. Laughter cascaded, but later, alone under stars, Juliet turned pensive. We survived the storm. But the quiet. It's the real gift. Brinley nodded, wind rustling leaves like applause. And the message? Love doesn't conquer. It endures through betrayals, badges the whole damn grind. Humanizes us all. Dawn of their 75th year brought the unforeseen. A stroke for Juliet, sudden as summer thunder, leaving her right side willful but weak. Brinley became caregiver, hands that once wrenched engines now steadying spoons, her vigil a vow renewed. Talk to me, Jules, she'd urge in the rehab haze, reading aloud from their letters, the mill's ghosts benign now. Recovery was grueling, Juliet's frustration flaring. I led charges, now I can't tie my shoe. But Brinley's patience a rock, massages easing knots, stories spinning futures. Remember Oregon? She'd say, wheeling her to the river. We chased horizons. This is just a detour. Juliet's laugh bubbled, therapy's victories stacking. First steps unaided, then dances slow in the kitchen, radio crooning their song. The town's embrace deepened in their twilight. Mayoral visits, school kids planting trees in their yard. A mural on Main depicting two women hand in hand, truck silhouetted. Whispers turned to wonders. Elders recounting the Harlan girls like legend, youth emulating their grit. But the deepest humanism bloomed internal. Juliet's memoir finished, badges and bonds, ghosted by Brinley's edits, chapters closing with we chose each other over everything, and nothing. As autumn gilded the leaves, they planned a final road trip. Bessie rebuilt for the occasion, grandkids piled in back. The route looped south, skirting Monroe's edges, stopping at vistas where they'd pause, hands clasped. Worth it? Juliet asked once, Pacific in view, her voice thin but true. Brinley's answer a kiss, salt-tanged. Every jagged mile. The end came soft, winter's grip loosening to spring. Juliet slipping in sleep after a day of stories. Brinley's head on her chest hearing the last lullaby heartbeat. Grief was a garden overgrown but Brinley tended it. Foundation thriving, co-op a beacon, grandkids carrying the flame. At the funeral Riverside she spoke to the assembly. She arrested my heart first. Taught me justice starts within. Love her fiercely as she loved me. Unapologetic, unbound. Monroe mourned matronly, but Brinley's solace was solitude's grace. Mornings with coffee for two, swaying empty but echoed. The truck waiting for one last drive. In quiet hours she'd whisper to the wind. Too pretty? Hell, we drove the world. The legacy lingered, a humanism etched eternal. In a society of scripts they authored their own. Kisses defying decrees, hands bridging divides, proving the heart's arrest the only one that frees.